Hello. This is completely unexpected. I just decided to do this right now, because it's 11:21 p.m. and it's the end of the decade. It's the end of 2019. It's the end of the 2010s, and well, so much has happened in the tech sphere, in my life, in so many different things that I do, and that I'm a part of over the last decade. I mean, in 2010 I was 7. I was 6, about to turn 7. So like, it is mental, and I just want to talk about it. So yeah, we're gonna do that. I just want to check that this is working first, though.
Three notifications. Do not disturb. Calls and notifications will be silenced. YouTube. Double tap to open.
I don't expect many people to be watching, to be honest. But
next video. Play. Twitch now. Mobile live dashboard. Manage your channel directly from.
Okay, well, Twitch is working. I'm streaming this on Restream, so you will all be able to see it. The main audience is obviously on YouTube, but oh god,
Cancel button. Live Dev Midnight 2000. I'm not sorry. TLG//
no.
2019. This is Ross. Moving on.
Okay, hang on. I need to swap to the other account.
Paid membership. Switch account. Button. The fake VIP40. The fake music channel 47. The fake VIP2.
The fake VIP2.
Signed in as the fake VIP cast. Button.
Library.
Let you love me. Official video.
No, I don't want random things that I've clicked on 3 years ago
Your account.
on the wrong account.
Search. Button. Your account. Button. Account. Edit. My channel. Your account. My channel.
My channel. I thought that said your channel. If they changed it again.
End of the decade. Coding. Provision.
Here it is.
Video player. Edit. Track. Pause.
No.
Play. Well, learn more. Chat message input.
Okay.
End of the decade. Coding. Provision. Homework and general live chat. Video player.
Oh yes, I was going to do some revision and some stuff because I was going to do this much earlier in the day, but I think I might show some code, but I think mostly this is just going to be some live chat. So actually, I might change that. Let's have a look here. While I'm doing that, I started this channel in September of 2012, and oh my god, so many tabs. I started this channel in 2012, and it's been a heck of a ride. I just closed Firefox. It's been an absolute heck of a ride for me. Most of my videos are from 2015 and onwards because, well, I was 9 in 2012. I was young enough that I was actually scared about posting videos because I thought YouTube would come after me because you had to be 13. Well, that changed fast, and wow, has this place ever come on? I'm sitting at 130 subscribers right now on the main channel. This is obviously the second channel, so I don't have nearly as many. But yeah, the things that have been done for Linux accessibility and the bits I've contributed and all sorts have really sped up over the last few years. I know there was a time where Linux accessibility was complete and utter trash, and it only worked on GNOME and Unity, and that was it. And, well, boy, has that changed. It's still got a long way to go. We really need Electron support. But, yeah, I got into Linux in about 2012. So, I suppose just tell me... I'll start again. I can't talk, can you tell? I suppose I should tell you my story. I was always interested in technology growing up, but it was when I got my iPod Touch 4th gen that I still have, that's behind me over there. It still works. It's completely useless, of course, although I think the YouTube app on iOS 6 actually still works. So I got that probably 2011, Christmas 2011. I think it was. Before that, literally the only 2 devices I had that had microchips in. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Before my iPod, I got a digital camera in 2009, which I also still have, that also still works, but no one would want to use it. And I got an iPod Shuffle, which unfortunately I lost on holiday, so I never got that back. But It's an iPod Shuffle. What do you who knows? Um, I got that in, I think, either 2009 or 2010. I'm pretty sure it was 2009 Christmas as well. Um, Other than those two, the only other thing I had that had a CPU in my house was my IBM ThinkCentre, which was a refurb from 2005, a Windows XP PC, perfectly usable in 2010. I used that thing up until 2015 um, at my dad's house, and it served me ridiculously well, considering it's a Pentium 4, and we all know what those are like, with a gig of RAM. Phew, how can you survive on a gig of RAM? This Mac Pro that I'm sitting in front of right now has 32, just to put it in perspective. So those are the only things I had. When I got my iPod Touch, I had the internet at my disposal, because I should point out, we knew nothing about screen readers or anything like that back then. So my computer was basically useless unless someone else was using it with me. And that led to me gravitating towards Apple, because we found out that Apple has awesome accessibility. Even back then it did. So I got an iPod Touch with iOS 4 on it, and I loved that thing. That introduced me to a lot of things. It introduced me to the internet. It introduced me to all the different apps you could get for it. It introduced me to how to use a screen reader on a mobile device and a screen reader in general and how it was going to work. And most importantly, it introduced me to YouTube, which at the time was big, not nearly as big as it is now, but still very big, and a bottomless well of information. And using that, and using my iPad that I got on, I believe it was Mother's Day 2012, my iPad 3rd gen, also still have. You may be noticing a bit of a theme here. I keep all these old things. I still have my ThinkCentre as well. It doesn't work, but I need to sort that out. Long story short, this all introduced me to YouTube, and ever since that point, regardless of whether I can see or not, I've always wanted to be a YouTuber. And I made that happen. I created my Google account in 2012 for a completely different purpose. I created it because I had to sign into a remote desktop app, because I was fiddling on with that. And yeah, once I found out you could do YouTube from there, things happened. I was mostly inspired by a few different channels, namely OS First Timer. Now, if you haven't heard of Philip Adams and you don't know who OS First Timer is, then go check out his channel. He doesn't post much anymore. He still does, but it's a trickle of content. That channel started in 2012, and I very soon discovered it. It's a channel where Philip Adams, which is he's an Australian YouTuber, he tries to get his mother and later on various other members of his family to try different distributions of Linux and operating systems and all sorts of different things, and later even programs and 3D design and editing and all sorts. And he did that. Now I joined that. I joined onto that at the macOS 1.1 video. So let's grab Firefox here, and let's go to youtube.com, and let's look at the upload date. OS First Timer Mac System 1.1. I want to know what the upload date was on this video. That's it right there. Say, oh, it doesn't actually say, hang on. Pause. 12th of January 2013. That's when I discovered this channel, I'm pretty sure, or very close to that. Now, this introduced me to a heck of a lot. The impact that Philip Adams has had on the world of, I would say, people born after the year 2000 who are interested in technology is more profound than I think anybody could have ever guessed, particularly in my circles, because he introduced me to Linux and the concept of open source and the concept of an operating system in general, and got me interested in computer software and, to a lesser extent, computer hardware in a way that nobody else ever has. This guy not only did this, but also pointed me in the direction of a load of other things. He pointed me in the direction of JupiterBroadcasting.com. Particularly the Linux Action Show. Literally just in passing, because he mentioned the Linux Action Show. He pointed me in at Infinitely Galactic's channel, which he taught me about all these different Linux distributions. And combined with the Linux Action Show, that's where I got my open source sort of spirit and my ideals and all this type of stuff from, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without any of those three different places. Linux Action Show finished up in 2017, but Linux Unplugged 13, end of it, 2014, something like that. I can tell you, it'll have been around the time that they released the episode on Own Cloud version 5. There's a blast from the past if you know what that is. But I'm getting off track. This is how I started the decade. I started with no programming knowledge. I started with a Pentium 4 computer with a gig of DDR RAM running Windows XP Professional with no screen reader. I had Narrator, and I didn't know how to use Narrator. I started off 7 with practically no friends, no one to talk to. I always knew I had this kind of interest, but it never was a, it was, I had no idea it was going to get this far. So I started putting content up. Now let's have a look. Man, I can't type today. Let's have a look at YouTube. Right. And in case you're wondering, by the way, I do have my screen reader on. I've just turned off desktop audio so you can't hear it. Your channel. Now, I'm not used to using the desktop version, so we'll see how this goes. Can I get to videos? Go to videos. Now, how do I sort by oldest first? Sort by. Bear with me. Where's... date added oldest. Right, here we go. The whole thing's going to refresh. And... yes. I remember this. Let me just turn on my desktop audio a minute. Right, you should be able to hear my screen reader now. And some other stuff. The audio might actually be quite quiet. I'm not too sure. But... this was... I can't pause it. There we go. This is not my first video. The first video I ever made, I believe, and I may be wrong, was a video called How to Get Free Calls Using Fring Out. Now, I don't know how many people remember the app Fring, but it was an app, basically FaceTime but not FaceTime, and Skype but not Skype, and Uvu, and whatever you want to call it. It was a video chat app, but it also let you it also let you make free phone calls, I believe. And I got this on my iPad, and I didn't actually, the funny thing is, I didn't actually ever make a phone call from it because, well, first of all, it wasn't free. It's much more close to free than an actual phone bill is. But you had to confirm an in-app purchase, and all I did was I took a load of screenshots and I threw them into Avid Studio for the iPad because for some bizarre reason I thought that was a better idea than iMovie. Not entirely sure why. And I put some titles up and I posted it. And it got about 100 views, I believe. But this was back when I couldn't care less about YouTube, so I never really looked at it. Eventually took it down because Fring I don't think Fring exists anymore, and moved on to better things. The next thing I made was my new intro, which I don't know how many people remember this. You probably don't. Did I even use it on a video? Hang on. Ah, back. No, not that far back. Hang on. Oh god. Anyway, the next video I made was an intro, and literally all it was I took Keynote on my Mac because by this point I had a MacBook, a 2012 MacBook Air. That I loved that thing to absolute pieces. I took Keynote on that and I made a little typewriter-ish typing thing that said Michael Buchan, because this was way before the Fake VIP was a name. And just chucked it in iMovie, added some sound effects, uploaded that got barely any views, unsurprisingly. I took both of those videos down. It's honestly so long ago that I can't even really remember why, and they ain't coming back. I didn't private them, I just deleted them outright. So there's that. Then I started posting these GarageBand things, and these... You've got to remember, back then I had no channel direction whatsoever. I was only messing around with Linux at this point. I had never installed it on actual hardware. I'd installed it in a VirtualBox VM on my Mac using Mac OS X Mountain Lion, because for some bizarre reason throughout the whole time I used that thing I never updated it. But anyway, so I had no tech direction or anything. I just started uploading cool things I made in GarageBand. That only lasted 2 videos. I still actually do this. I don't know if I'll be able to find this, but I'm gonna try. Does this show up? Oh my goodness, it does. Clickable button action menu. Heading level 3 link noise orange and music Harley 47 and TheFake VIP and TheFake music channel 47 2 years space set and FOTK space SRADY 2 space 74 visited. Not insolvent with its official comments. Yes, more GarageBand stuff, but heading level 1 TheFake VIP. Heading news bullet 12 set 2017. Clickable link toggle button not pressed like this video along with this. So I still make these GarageBand things. I still put them up on this channel, the Fake Music Channel 47. I've never publicized this. The name, in case you're wondering, is a combination of the Fake VIP and Ollie47, because Ollie47 is, and I don't tend to publicize this much because, welcome to family. Ollie47 is my stepbrother's channel, and, well, the main reason I don't publicize it is because it has nothing to do with my channel. It's all about gaming and stuff. He plays a lot of Fortnite. But so that's a thing, and from there things skyrocketed. I made the quick test video plus my main computer, which that showed off my MacBook setup, which unfortunately I smashed the screen on, and I still have it, but it's not worth repairing at this point. I deliberated over it for years and years, and even asked Apple for a quote, but turned out it was 465 quid, and for 450 I got a MacBook Pro from 2 years newer. So that's a thing. That laptop really got me started though with YouTube, and my iPad did. And then this is where it really starts. In 2016 I bought myself another computer. I bought myself for £30, 25 plus shipping, an HP DC 5700, which is in no way a good computer, but completely trounced everything else I had other than the MacBook at the time. Because you've got to remember, the only other computer I had other than the MacBook was the ThinkCentre, which was a Pentium 4, and this was a Core 2 Duo, albeit not a very good Core 2 Duo, but I dealt with it. and it was a heck of a lot more usable. So I kept that at Mum's, and I did all sorts of crazy stuff on it. And one of the things I did on it was create... Well, actually, I was going to say random access review, but before we even get to that, I created a My Thoughts on Ubuntu Mate 16.04 plus quick update video. That was the first video on this channel that really got popular enough that I decided I was going to stick with it, I think. I had things before then, but that reached about 220 odd views as of the making of this. And the thing that... Your device will receive... Welcome to the 2020s where Windows 10 does this. The thing that really inspired me to keep going was Martin Wimpress, the guy who made Ubuntu Mate, actually commented on that video and talked to me and was talking about investigating screen reader issues. And I never, in my wildest dreams, thought that, yes, Linux is the Linux community and the FOSS community, FLOSS, open source, free software, I don't care what you want to call it. At the end of the day, we're all part of the same boat. That community, I knew it was receptive, and I knew it was a very strong place to get started, but I had no idea that somebody with, I think at the time I had something like 7 subscribers, maybe more than that. I know by the time I made the Mac Mini video, which was over a year later, I had 14, so it was less than that. I never in my wildest dreams expected that to happen, to have the creator of the thing I was using comment on it, because let's face it, Windows, that isn't going to happen, is it? If I made some comments on Windows 10, like I literally just did with this stupid thing, go away, Microsoft isn't going to comment on it. So that really got me started, and then came Random Access Review. Now, I have changed the name of Random Access Review so many times that it's honestly quite ridiculous. It started off as Linux Accessibility for Blind and Visually Impaired Users EP1 Ubuntu Mate 16.04. That's a mouthful, and as any sensible person would do, I decided that that wasn't a good name. So I had to come up with something else. I moved it around. I put Linux Accessibility after Ubuntu Mate 16.04. I did stuff like that. And eventually I settled on Random Access Review because, and this is where it comes from. It comes from Random Access was the news section of the Computer Chronicles, which was a show that ran from 1983 to 2000. Well, actually 1981 to 2000, but the national versions were 1983 to 2000. About computers. Random Access was the news part of that. And I took that and I merged it with review because I'm reviewing things. And it works really well for this because access refers to accessibility for the blind and VI. So Linux Accessibility for Blind and Visually Impaired Users became Random Access Review, but initially I had that before the Ubuntu Mate 16.04. This is getting into the complete weeds, by the way. I'm going off on a complete tangent. I hope you have ears still. And I swapped it because, well, you know how the algorithm goes, and you know how people read stuff. If they read from left to right, which most English-speaking, well, all English-speaking places do, then they're going to read Ubuntu Mate 16.04 and go, ooh, this is interesting. If they read Random Access the review, they'll have no idea what it means. All this is a massive tangent to say, I started this Google account on like the 21st of September 2012, and here we are sitting on December 31st, 2019 at 11:45 p.m. We have 15 minutes to go until the end of the decade, which, for your information, is the first decade that I've ever fully experienced. Go away! Why can't Windows figure out that I'm streaming? Is there any way I can, like, put do not disturb? Oh god. Put do not disturb on. Focus assist. There we go. Right. Anyway, it's been a wild ride, and I really hope that I can get further up. I really hope that I can continue to grow this little community, because something else happened in 2016. This happened in 2016. I'm just going to go to beta. This little website started off as, and I think the code is still around because I knew Git by this point. This little thing, this what is now the biggest project of mine outside of Mundustry, which isn't really my project, and that's a thing. Started out as a little PHP script that would take all the only server-side processing I ever did on this website to start with was include the navbar. And this all started because we were looking at getting a new note taker at school, for me, a Braille note taker, and we were comparing two devices, and I thought, I'll write this up. And I did, but I thought, well, what's the point in me writing this up if I'm never going to look at it afterwards? Why don't I keep it as public information? And thus started blindcomputing.org. Now, at the beginning, it was blind-computing.comlu.com. Then it became blindcomputing.x10host.com. And now it is finally blindcomputing.org, and it finally has its own domain. I've rewritten this thing so many times. After the original PHP version, I then created, which, bear in mind, at this point, I knew practically no. I knew web development, but I didn't know Flexbox. I didn't know CSS Grid. I didn't know a line of JavaScript. I didn't know about Bootstrap. I didn't know about responsiveness. I didn't know about media queries. There are a million different things I didn't know about. This was one of the first big ongoing projects, and to date the longest running, as far as I'm aware, project that I've ever taken on. And I rewrote it in Bash because, funny tidbit, Bash is the first programming language, scripting language, it's not a programming language. Shell. Bash is the first shell that I ever learned to any high degree. Well, actually, I learned POSIX compliant shell first. That's basically the first closest thing to a programming language I ever learned outside of HTML, which also isn't a programming language. Let's not get into the weeds here. Some of the first programs I ever made were written in Bash because, well, I had a Mac, I opened Terminal, I got fascinated by the terminal, and I learnt the terminal. And that's where it started. So back in 2016, I thought I could write a better website in Bash than I could with PHP. Turns out, while this may have been kind of true, it was also extremely hard to maintain because I didn't know anything about CGI, I didn't know anything about Apache. I had a VPS, I had the same VPS that I have now, the Blind Computing server that also runs Mundustry, that runs a lot of stuff around here. I'm so glad I pay the $5 a month for it. It's worth every single last penny and more. I had that, but I had no idea how to set up a server, so I was using BusyBox's HTTPD to serve this. Oh no, hang on, was I? I was either using HTTPD or I was using CGI HTTP server, which is built into Python. One of the two. I didn't know what systemd was, so I had no idea. Well, I knew what it was, but I had no idea how to use it. So I couldn't write a service for it. If the server ever crashed or I needed to restart it, I had to manually run a command and throw it into the background. That would run this Bash script because it's a Bash script. I still have that version. If you go to github.com/ no, that's the old throwback URL. I don't know why I can't type today. If you go here, if you scroll down to this table of stuff, let's see, old version. Hold the extremely old PHP version of the site before the first rewrite. This is Blind Computing iteration 1. This is alpha. Rewrite 2018-019, the old Bash-based version of the website. I still have all these branches and I'll keep them forever. Quick side note, when the Laravel version of Blind Computing gets finished, I do have complete plans to do that, by the way.
11:51 p.m.
Then I am going to delete these branches. I'm going to archive them. They're not going to be on GitHub anymore. I'm going to keep them for my own because nobody wants to use them. And I mean, they're just so out of date and useless. If anybody did want to, I might put them up as a Blind Computing Classic repo or something like that, just to a date of the license, because I believe some of these old versions were licensed under the GPL. I'm not entirely sure. I know it moved to LGPL for a while, and I'm not entirely sure what my reasoning was, but rest assured, we're back on GPL now, or maybe AGPL. I need to look into the specifics because I need to know the legalities around it, but we are definitely using a GNU license for Blind Computing, and we will forever, because I just want this website to be a thing that people can take advantage of, and it's the same with the YouTube channel. I've never done this for the money. It would be absolutely amazing if I could do this full time, because I could just help out my community. It's not going to happen though, let's face it. I'm going to push for it all I can, but there is not enough people who like Linux who are also blind. But for the people that do, and for the people that like other things, like I said, the first article on Blind Computing was device related. That's what I hope to achieve with this. It might take some time to come to fruition. I'm still trying to sort out the styling. I'm still trying to sort out the content management system behind this. It's all the logistics. But when it gets implemented, I'll be complete. It's the biggest project I've ever taken on, and I have no intention of stopping. And if anybody wants to help, github.com/blind-computing/blind-computing or blindcomputing.org. And with all those crazy announcements out the way, oh, I can't type. That spoiled it. We're rewriting Mundustry again. Take it out of this. There we go. This is the new version of Mundustry, and it's obviously not complete. Now, I want to explain why we're doing this. Alright. My mom's going out to watch the fireworks. And I will be sitting here with you. It's 11:54. So, 6 minutes till the new decade. I've been reflecting a lot. I don't know if you can tell. I just felt like I wanted to talk about it, so I did. Mundustry I picked up in 2018. This is Billy's project at BillsWax0025 on Discord. Or BillsWax here on YouTube, though he doesn't do anything anymore. This has been... So if Blind Computing is my longest running project, and is my longest running project, Mundustry is my biggest project, and it's not even mine. I'm not gonna introduce what Mundustry is. For those who don't know, go look at my main channel. I've made videos on this already, but I wanted to explain why we're rewriting it again. And it comes down to this: the last decade has been a learning process for definitely me, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Billy as well. I knew zero about HTML. The first time I played with HTML was, I believe, the end of 2010. So at the beginning of this decade, I knew nothing about anything to do with web technologies. I knew what the internet was, and that was about it. I hadn't even used it by this point. And here we are sitting, let's see, 5 minutes away from 2020, and I'm still learning. So the original Mundustry was very old school PHP using MySQL, not escaping SQL injection properly. It kind of was, but it was using the old... Well, I don't think it was using real escape string. Either way, it was using a very old, non-class-based approach to things. We rewrote this whole thing class-based, and don't get me wrong, that is a better system by far. It is very... It's very modular. It's very... Well, it could have been more modular because I had them tied in with each other quite a bit. But that's a thing. Like it worked well enough, and it's still up, and it still works. The main Mundustry website still works. I can still log in. All this stuff. However, that's not how you write PHP. That's not how you write web dev projects these days. So, commenced a project to rewrite the whole thing in Laravel. And if you don't know what Laravel is, it's a framework that lets you much more easily develop websites, and I absolutely love it. However, it's also massive. So I'm still learning it. Billy is still learning how exactly. We're still getting to grips with it. But we decided to rewrite it because after I came, Mundustry died for a while. No one's going to deny that. And after I came back to the code, I took one look at it and went, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what any of this stuff does, and this is a mess. And when you're dealing with no templating engine, don't forget we were just outputting strings of HTML raw and putting things in there. It wasn't even very correct HTML, really. It was technically correct, but we were using single quotes all over the place, and it was an absolute mess. And I took one look at it and went, I can't use this anymore. So that's why we're rewriting this. But I have gone massively off track. 2 more minutes to go. As this decade wraps up, I cannot thank the people who have stuck by me in my personal life, and especially online, and in my YouTuber life, and on Discord. Discord was the thing that happened. I only joined Discord because of OS First Timer, and I only joined it in 2017. I can't thank you all enough. By the way, in case you wonder what this is, oh god, I've broken it. I got a new microphone stand for Christmas. Anyway, complete tangent. I thank everybody for sticking by me and all this different stuff. And here's to a brand new decade. But I also wanted to talk about the Linux community because I wasn't around in the Linux community in 2010. I got into Linux in about 2012, 2013, probably 2013. Mainly got into it around 2014. I remember Ubuntu 14.04 was a massive thing. And I started properly using it on actual hardware on that was Ubuntu 15.10, so October of 2015. And wow, have things changed in the open source community. I was just watching a video by the Linux Gamer on the top 10 things that he thinks have become so amazing these days. And by the way, 59, 160 more seconds. This is mental to me. I was watching a video by the Linux Gamer, and he pointed out all these different things. Steam on Linux has become a thing. Hardware support has massively improved. Linux runs on more devices than ever. It has completely cornered the server market. And all these things. However, as I like to do at the end of these years, and by the way, it's 2020. Welcome to a new decade. Why can't I get this to work? 01 January 2020. I have never seen that number not be a 1. Well, I have, but not since I was barely aware of myself. Anyway, Linux has come at a ridiculous pace and to a ridiculously amazing point. However, I feel like we've lost. I know there are going to be people who massively disagree, but I feel like we've lost touch with consumers and the Linux desktop dream. And this sounds old hat and completely cliche at this point. I know that. I fully understand that. It is. But hear me out, because when this decade started, we were sitting on operating systems like Windows 7 and Snow Leopard and things like that. We had a fledgling iOS, a fledgling Android. They were very limited, but the desktop OSs, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, and when I say a lot of people's, I'm talking about lay people here. I talk to many people who have no idea what like they couldn't care less about technology, because I think the geek community and the nerd community and the FOSS community particularly tends to forget about these people. And by far, when I show them Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, they all agree Windows 7 is a perfectly good workhorse and just got out your way and got stuff done. It was not perfect by a landslide. There was a lot of things wrong with it. It ran pretty... It ran better than Vista, but it still ran pretty slow considering. And it's Windows at the end of the day. What you're going to do? Viruses are a thing. Windows Live and all this stupid, crazy stuff. But when I compare Windows 7 to Windows 10, when I compare Snow Leopard to Catalina, there is no contest. And it's not because they are... It is not because... Catalina is not bad because of all the new features. It's not bad because it has a new look. That is part of it. I do say this. I having come from a background where everybody I've talked to says they don't like the flat appearance, or at least a lot of people. I don't like the flat appearance either. However, I'm visually impaired. I couldn't care less. What I do care about is the consumer experience. In 2005, I was listening to Linux Unplugged the other day. In 2005, the GNOME project launched a thing called 10 by 10, which was to gain 10% of the market share of the desktop by 2010. It didn't happen by a large percentage. We're still only at about 2% as it is. However, this illustrates the feelings of me and the people back then. Is we want to get this technology directly into the hands of consumers. And I think not only has Linux failed at creating an enjoyable technology experience, but so has everybody else. Look at Windows 8. Windows 8 was one of the first things that I ever looked at in technology because I came fresh out of having YouTube, and one of the first things I was looking at was, what is Windows 8? I'd experienced Windows 7. We used Windows XP on every computer in the school. We used Windows XP at home. I used Windows XP at home. Dad used Windows 7 though, so I did know what Windows 7 was. And in 2012, I got a Windows 8 laptop from school, which we still have. It still runs Windows 8 somehow. And really nice machine. But this is Windows 8. And originally, I was for it. But these days, looking back, what a mess Microsoft did to their consumers. They took a perfectly good operating system, which they could have innovated on. Let me just make this clear. If they had, even if they wanted to update the look of Windows 7, they could have ditched Aero or made it an option and gone to a new flat look. They could have done all that. They could have introduced the Windows 8 new start screen for mobile only. And people would complain, but it would have been a lot better than Windows 8 ended up. The blunders that people have made over the last decade in technology are very high, to the point where this is a start menu, not a start screen. And this is the latest version of Windows 10, version 1909. But it wasn't just Microsoft. Apple have done some questionable things. They've tried to merge the desktop and mobile experience a bit as well. Not nearly as much as Microsoft tried to and ultimately failed to. They discontinued Windows 10 Mobile. But things like Launchpad, I like them. A lot of people won't. But they just moved away from innovation. And I am not somebody who has worked on an operating system. I have not programmed a kernel. I have not programmed a user interface short of the small programs I make and the Blind Computing, which is a website, so it's very different. And things like that. And I sit here in 2020 now with a million ideas in my head of how to make things better for the consumer. Google is notoriously bad at not looking at what their consumers want. With Android, I hear all these complaints about, I'm a daily Android user. I love it, don't get me wrong. I run Lineage OS. But I hear these things all the time. Linus Tech Tips comments on, you can't set reminders as a G Suite user. How big of an oversight is that? I just feel like nobody actually targets the consumer, the person who's actually going to use this technology. I think we get way too caught up in building the technology and not building it for the masses. And Linux has both succeeded and failed in this area. GNOME 3, I've used it now. I like it. It has a lot of features that other desktops don't have on Linux, or other desktops in general don't have. It's a very keyboard driven workflow. I absolutely love dynamic workspaces, but why they decided to ditch GNOME 2 in favor of it, I will never know. You will know from my channel that I'm a very happy Mate user. I've used Ubuntu Mate for years. I've used Mate on Arch before. I've used Mate in Debian before. I may have even used Mate in Fedora, but I can't remember. Either way, there was nothing wrong with GNOME 2, except innovation. And I suppose that's what GNOME 3 tried to do. They tried to innovate. And that's a good thing, but it caused a heck of a lot of problems. Unity tried to innovate. Kinda succeeded again. The HUD, the hood, one of the best features of Unity. I've heard that Unity had unparalleled multi-monitor support. But we just didn't seem to come together and do this. We've focused so much over the last 10 years on the server. I listen to linuxheadlines.show now. It's one of the best places to get updates, and I listen to Linux Unplugged, and every other story is server related. There's nothing wrong with that. Servers run the world now, and that's a fact of life. But I think the Linux landscape is a far cry from where I would have wanted it had I been around in 2010. I would have wanted 50% of people to be interacting with free software, and they interact with things like Firefox and Audacity and GIMP to a lesser extent. Blender is a big one. Things like this a lot, but they don't interact with a desktop that respects their freedom. And particularly in the last year or two, as privacy concerns have risen, I think it is paramount that this happens. But like I was saying before, I sit here and I think of so many different features that people could want, but the tech giants aren't going to implement them. They're too busy focused on gimmicks that'll make them money by buyer's remorse. I just want to make what matters. I want to make an enjoyable experience for the people that actually use the technology, that don't have to figure out how to use the technology. They just use it. That's what Apple's been doing for years with iOS. It's got its fair share of issues, don't worry, but I think the Linux desktop could do a lot better here. People don't want to move from Windows to a completely different workflow. Some people it will click with, but if you introduce a new workflow like that, you are introducing a paradigm that people have to be willing to get used to. I have family members, I have friends that either for years and have only recently, or still refuse to use Linux, and not because there's anything wrong with it, and they know that. They know they can do everything they need to do. It's because they don't have the time in their lives, because they're not technology freaks. They're not technology people who they don't care about it. It's a tool to them. They do not have the time to sit and learn a new interface. So revolutionizing the desktop is not what we want to do. Evolutionizing the desktop is what we want to do. That's probably not a word. People should be able to come from these platforms and just quickly get used to them. And I think that's why, although it gets hate mail, XFCE and Mate and all these traditional desktops, and GNOME 3, because it's Mac, well, it's Mac-ish, is a bit different, but the desktops, like, I hate to name drop Elementary because they're not just about Mac, but, people, there is no denying that people who are used to a Mac will get used to Elementary quickly. These desktops that offer an experience similar to the others are extremely important, and What isn't important, however, is to copy them. Because we need to take these paradigms, you open up a notepad and you type text. Oh my goodness, that's blinding. I don't want to save that. You want this type of paradigm with menus and toolbars and heck, even ribbons. Because that's what people are used to now. I don't know many people anymore other than the tech community who complain about office ribbons because the people have just gotten used to them. And we need to take advantage of this. We need to use the best design principles we can find and improve upon them. I'm a big proponent of getting something that works and improving on it. Revolutions are helpful sometimes, but it's not going to help, as far as I'm aware. It's not going to help the Linux desktop reach a market share, which at the end of the day is what I want, is what I would like to hope more than just me wants. Lots of people have said before that, well, we've just kind of accepted as a community that Linux is never going to achieve a desktop market share, and I don't believe that for a second. If you just accept that something isn't going to happen, then it isn't going to happen. There's a famous quote from Henry Ford that says, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that could not be more true. If the Linux community at large decides that we are not going to conquer the desktop, then we will not conquer the desktop, because people will not make the innovation. People will not, never mind evolution versus revolution, people won't be making the code. They will not be committing stuff. They will not commit time, money, effort. And if that happens, this dream just vanishes. And I don't think it is worth making this dream vanish, because, well, after all, how does any other dream become true? It'll be better for consumers in a lot of ways. And I think if we can take advantage of the fact that companies don't seem to care a lot, some of them anyway, particularly about the desktop. Leaps and bounds have been made in mobile recently because that's what people care about now, it seems, but I still think the desktop and laptops are a very viable thing. And I just want to make technology better for everyone, and I want it to be open source. So anyway, this has been a massive ramble. This is not nearly as succinct as I would hope, but whatever. I hope you enjoyed. It is now 12:14 on the first day of the new decade. And I hope to see you in the future in 2020.